Today's project is going to be this 3-piece garden tool turning set kit. It comes with 3 pieces. It comes with a trowel, a claw, and whatever this is. I guess it's a seed cultivator. Basically all I'm going to do is turn the handles. So my wife doesn't have very many trowels and claws. So she only has 3 of those, and she doesn't have a cultivator. So this is why we need to get this done as soon as possible, now that it's going to be time for planting soon. So I'm going to use this piece of oak. It's 1.5 inches tall. I'm going to cut off 1.5 inch pieces off of this, make it square, and the project calls for 3 blanks of wood or other material, 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches by 6 inches. So that's what I'm going to do. Literally, that is the entirety of the instructions, other than you need 11/16 pen maker's bit. I don't know what that is, but what we have here is the claw, the cultivator, and the trowel. The mount is this, and I guess what you're supposed to do is drill this 11/16 inch hole and then kind of pound the handle into it. There's a little catch here. We will be adding some epoxy to the hole in the handle, and that catch will help keep the handle in place. I normally switch out my blade to a rip blade or a crosscut blade, but since this is gonna be rough for the turning, I didn't bother, and I regretted it, because not so much because it cuts rough, that's okay, but more because the blade as a multi-use blade was, fighting me more than if I would have put the proper blades on. So the people who tell you, oh, just use a multi-use blade for everything, when you use the correct blade, it's a lot easier. That's all I have to say about that. So I have these now 4 blanks of wood here. I need to mount them on the lathe. And then I also need to drill a 11/16 hole. The plans called for a very specific and odd-sized bit, and I looked for it in my local hardware store, and they didn't have an 11/16, but they did have it in a spade bit. So let's give this a try, see what happens. I have a suspicion it's not going to work out too well, but whatever. I got now another piece of tool work, so let's see. Alright, let's try that. So, will it fit? too big. I said 7/16, 11/16. That hole's way too big. I have marked the tail end of the stock for center, and I put my live center in place. Then I mounted this piece of stock in my 4-jaw chuck. Yep, that looks good. Let's see what it does. All right, so the first one is glued up. The epoxy worked just nicely. I need to still smooth out the back side, but I think I'm going to do all 3 of these units at the same time when I do that, so I'm going to start working on the next one. Got another blank, and we will do what we did the last time again. So put in the center here, and here's my center finder. And the way I do these center finders is, especially with pieces that are cut in the square like this, with square corners, so I do all 4 corners. Because notice, I don't know if you can see that, but there's not an actual defined X there. There is a line here and line here and line. So what ends up happening, it doesn't find the exact center, but it gives me a close enough view that I can determine the center on my own. I'm trying a new camera mount that's mounted to my head as a headband, so hopefully this isn't too dizzy racking. I think it might be. I might limit this headband in the future. But so what we can do, lock this in and then bring in the center. There we go, into that spot. It's not perfect, most likely, but it's going to be perfect enough. And then I just tighten, once I got that in the center like that, I'll just tighten my 4-jaw chuck, and that's going to bring it and keep it in its place. There we go. The casting for these tools is rough, so what I'm doing is I'm just using a file and I'm cleaning up that casting a little bit where it needs to be cleaned up, especially towards the top here, so that it will lay flat. Each one has a varying level of roughness. This one's now smooth, and then I'm going to confirm that it fits. It does. So I watched a video put on by Woodcraft concerning doing this, and what they did was they just put the 5-minute epoxy directly into the hole, and there's probably way more than I needed to put in here, but Let's see what happens. It is. So what I will do is spin this around, and then once I am convinced that it's a good, I'm going to put it in my vise, which you can't see, to hold it upright, and I'm going to get a paper towel. Clean up the squeeze out. So and now we'll just wait the required set time, which is 5 minutes. This method of epoxying seems to be giving some slowness to the actual setting. So I will continue this project tomorrow. Okay, so I have successfully epoxied the handles onto the tools, and the epoxy has set completely. So they're done. However, I still have to handle the back. It's a rough edge, and what I will do is I will sand that down and fix that. And this one looks good too, but on this one I made a little mistake, and I kind of rounded the edge a little bit too much. What had happened is I had a catch, and it kind of ended up looking like heck. So I think, I'm not really sure if I'm going to try to replicate this sharp edge or just have it rounded. But one of the things that woodworkers tend to do, we're always so worried about making sure everything is perfect. You know, 9 times out of 10, our customers are never going to notice. So just make it look good. Don't worry about perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and sand these. I have installed my 3-inch disc onto the lathe, and this is an 80 grit piece of sandpaper, and I will just go ahead and clean it up, and then go to the next grit and clean it up and go to the next grit, and I'll probably go up to 320. Okay, so I have finished sanding all the bottoms, and I went ahead and put a coat of lacquer on them. And as I mentioned before, whenever you present such a thing to your customers, chances are they're never going to even notice that they're different. They're going to look at these as a whole, as a collection, and they're going to be very appreciative that this was handmade. They're not going to even mention that they're different. So let's see what the boss says. Hey babe.
Yes.
Check out these garden tools I made you.
Wow, you can barely tell the handles are different.
See what I mean? Good. Finally, after every woodworking project, you should always count your fingers. You end with 10. Good job.